Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the OCNJ Local, your podcast for everything happening here in America's greatest family resort. We're your hosts, Dominick Dougherty and Drew Fasy.
And we are your local guys.
Drew, you
Nailed
think
the intro, dude. Congrats.
No, I didn't. I messed it up.
You had it right the first time.
I went like this, and that's
correct. Right. That is correct.
No, that didn't point to you. That pointed off screen.
No, you didn't.
Maybe it's just reversed in yours.
Yeah,
because that looks right in my screen.
Yeah, no.
Either way, this is episode 50, Drew, and we're still working out the kinks. So maybe by episode 100, we'll still be working out the kinks. So, but
Likely.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody, has things not go their way sometime. And that's kind of the topic of our question here. Not the topic of our question, the topic of our episode today. Again, making mistakes, trying to get things back. The $30 million question, Drew. And some people might be asking, what is the $30 million question? Recently, a proposal was brought to City Council to invest $1 million to spruce up the lots between 16th and 17th Street on Haven Avenue. The location of the old Perry Egan Chevrolet car dealership that the city purchased a few years ago now for a whopping total of $30 million.
Ish.
30-ish. When you get into that range, we can go ishes and we're okay.
Yeah.
All right. The proposal was tabled because we wanted to see some more details. The $1 million, from what I've heard, involved new curbs and sidewalks for the two city blocks and some sod and grass field for the area. Currently, it is a asphalt lots with no curbage. It's all like driveways, if you will. And they've been doing some remediation and some environmental cleanup. So in the past, there's been sand, pipes, boats, all kinds of stuff have been there.
Excavators.
Yeah, just stuff. It's been just a $30 million, $30-ish million area. Let's just call it an area because it's not a parking lot. It's not a park.
Area in need of redevelopment.
Whoa. Don't go throwing around terms like that, Drew. Don't go throwing around terms like that. You're going to cause some problems. But honestly, though, we can get into that a little bit later. So, Drew, as always, you've done your due diligence here, at least some due diligence on this. And it's a question I think a lot of people don't really know the history of and don't really know, why are we going to spend $1 million? Why do we have this lot? Why did we spend $30-ish million for it? This is crazy. How did all this happen? How can we get some answers to this question?
It's a very complicated story dating back to 2018 with lots of twists and turns. So I'm going to cover it like
typical Ocean City story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give kind of broad strokes. So the parcel that we're talking about is between 16th and 17th, between Haven and Simpson Avenues. It's the former site of Perry Egan Chevrolet, which closed down in 2018. Simplistically, there are several parcels on that lot, but the entire block rather, is owned by two entities, or was owned by two entities. Brothers Jerry and Harry Claus own the majority of it. Let's call it 70%. I don't know the exact percentage. Someone does, I know. And their cousin, John Flood, owned the other parcel. Okay. So Prairie Egan closed down in 2018. The city was interested in purchasing the parcel really for two reasons. Number one, it would create a corridor of public space between 15th and 20th Street. Okay. Between 15th and 16th is the Emil Palmer Park. It's the former site of the Super Fresh supermarket. South of the property we're talking about is the community center between 17th and 18th, and the intermediate school between 18th and 20th Street. So by purchasing this lot, the city would now control a 5-block area between 15th and 20th. So that's the number one reason. The other reason is that they didn't want it developed and just more houses built there, right? So they entered into a contract to purchase that block in 2019 for $9 million. That deal fell through because a community group, Fairness in Taxes, circulated a petition drive for a voter referendum to block the purchase. They felt that $9 million was too high by a third of what the value was, or roughly. So they got enough signatures. It was going to be a ballot question, a referendum in the November election.
November of 2019 or November of 2020?
November of 2019, yes.
Okay.
So the contract that the city had would have expired prior to that election. So basically, both parties walked away. The clause and flood families, I guess, figured, this could be voted down. The contract's dead, so we're walking away. Okay. So the Claus brothers then went about getting approval on their parcel for 22 single-family homes. 22. So it was going to be like a coastal cottage type situation, right? You can reach
like the same thing that's down between. It's like something similar to what's between like 14th and 15th between Haven and Simpson, right? Like those single family homes.
Yeah, I thought it was 13th, but yes, that's exactly.
Yeah, it is
right.
13th. You're right, 13th
Yeah.
and 15th.
The old what was the trash company?
Public Works.
No, it was a private company, and they sold that big parcel, and they created coastal cottages. So the city didn't want that, right? That would be opposite of open space. And the neighbors in the area were not happy about that at all. And they put pressure on the city. So the city chose to take the property by eminent domain, the entire block. They succeeded and took possession of the property in 2021. So this is between 2020 and 21. But the case went to court over the value, right? They didn't want to take $9 million anymore. And I think the city may have thought that because of COVID, property values would go down. That didn't happen. Went to court. The court found that they would get an arbitrator or arbiters to decide the compensation to the families. So in 2022, the arbiters came back and said that the city should pay the Claus family $13 million and the Palmer portion $5.6 million. Now, either side can dispute those prices, and the sellers did. They contested those prices. So back to court they went after another round. In 2024, a final price schedule came to 17.9 million for the Claus family and 7.2 million for the flood parcel, plus interest on both. So the city decided to stop the bleeding, right? They had already committed to buying the property
They seized it. They seized it.
Yeah, by going through the eminent domain. They can't say, oh, never mind at this point. Right?
My bad. I don't want that anymore. It's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Cool.
This is a mulligan. I want a do-over. So they decided to stop the bleeding and pay those numbers. So all in, that city block could have been purchased for $9 million in 2019, but was settled for close to $30 million in 2024. I'm giving you really broad strokes because there are those that will, beat fairness and taxes over the head for costing the city basically $21 million. Fairness and taxes will point the finger at the Claus brothers and at John Flood and at the city and, everybody else did wrong things, not us, right? The details, it's very, very murky in my opinion.
So there's 6 sides to every story.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Who knows if any of them, and all of them are true to each side. So
that's right. That's right.
When you take emotion out of it,
the fact is, here's a fact. The city could have purchased that property in 2019 for $9 million. And
they ended up claiming it and purchasing it for $30-ish million in 2024. Those are the facts. Whether the referendum or all that stuff had something to do with it, who knows?
Who knows?
The facts are that.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes to show you.
Just as a side note, Dom, this is the same group who wanted the city not to purchase the Bayside Center property for $1 million back whenever that was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now imagine if the city did not purchase that property for $1 million. I mean, they could carve out a piece on Bay Avenue of that land and sell it for $1 million today, right?
Sounds good to me. I'm all about selling Bay Avenue properties for $1 million.
And that was, I'm sure you are, and that was kind of the same thought, right? Is that completed a public corridor from beach to bay between.
So I guess the big question is now that you have all this money sunk into this property, you own it. One of the things I think that scared off a lot of voters and raised a lot of questions was, why are we going to put this $1 million into it if it's just going to be temporary? What is the long-term vision for this property? And there's a bunch of ways to look at it, and you can
so
say,
the city, back in 2024, they wanted public input as to what to do there, right? So they put an online portal or survey, if you will, and asking for the public's input on what they should do with the property now that they owned it. Okay.
This is
there
all
were a lot of ideas
right now.
What's that?
This just all sounds so weird right now. Just keep going. Okay.
So there was a lot of ideas. People wanted pickleball courts. People wanted an outdoor pool. People wanted a drive-through or drive-in movie theater. They wanted a skate rink. They wanted a park with walking trails. They wanted an outdoor fitness area. They wanted a community garden. My idea, which I knew
we talked about this idea.
Yeah, we did talk about this. So when I wrote my idea down, the first line is, I know this is going to be wildly unpopular, but here it is, because I knew it was going to go over like a lead balloon, right? My idea was a public-private partnership with a developer, a big developer, to build a rent-controlled apartment building for year-round residents and families with children in our schools, and new police officers, new firemen, new teachers, people that worked in town. I knew it was going to be, and to me, it was a good location for it, because in that corridor right now, you have apartment buildings on one side and you have commercial on the other. So it's not like you want to plunk an apartment building in the middle of the gardens, right? But it's a heavy lift in terms of time and commitment from the city. So I knew it was going to be unpopular because nobody would.
Well, and also because it's purchased for open space, so why would you
Yes,
go
I
and
understand that. My contention, Dom, is we don't need that lot for open space. That's my position. We have plenty of open space. What we need are year-round residents.
we definitely need year
At a
round.
want and a need, the want is open space. The need is year-round residents. But be that as it may,
Well,
nobody's going in that direction.
Some people will say we need an attraction. We need something to bring
Yes.
people to town. So,
Well,
it's not on Boardwalk. It's not in the most desirable location, but there's parking available. There's a blank canvas, if you will.
Well, and that's why some of the ideas I thought were good, Tom. A big public pool, charge $5 a day or whatever,
You got one of those. It's
outdoor.
You got one of those. It's the
Where?
ocean.
I have
You got
one.
the ocean.
Where?
You got the ocean.
No,
the
pool.
ocean.
I thought that was a good idea. Pickleball courts, that's not really an attraction.
No,
But
people
you
don't
had
know
all these
pickleball.
inputs. What bottom line is, the overwhelming percentage of people wanted open space. Nothing on it but open space. So
then you can create an attraction. This is where I think the city needs to look at what it's trying to do down the road, years from now, and how this investment fits in, because you can either look at it and say, hey, all right, we got a bad deal here. We'll put the curbs, the grass, and we'll walk away and we'll leave it at that. Or find a way to generate some revenue with the property. Find a way to an investor or somebody who wants to do something there. There's no shortage of things that could be done in a place like that. Summers Point, just gonna use them for example. Driving in, their big push, #1 outdoor concert series in America. Set up an outdoor concert series there. Build an amphitheater.
The people that live in those apartments are going to love that idea.
You wrap it up by 9:00. Those things are done at 9:00. That's not unreasonable. You get food trucks there.
Give that idea on the survey?
True. In 2019, 2020, I had small children. I was lucky to, know where my car keys were most days.
Well, again, be that as it may, the overwhelming majority of people who commented and gave ideas, they just wanted open space. So that's what the city's now. So they're going to put down sod. They're going to put in sprinklers, I believe.
Hold on
they're going to put in curbs and sidewalks. Hold on, let me finish. They're going to put in curbs and sidewalks. Okay. And my guess is They're going to let the whole issue settle down for a couple of years. And then if there's something else that they want to do with the property, they'll do it in, 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, when everyone has forgotten that we spent $30 million on the property and we spent $1.2 million on curb, sidewalk, and grass.
1.2. I thought it was 1. So listen, if you do put this $1 million down, farmers market moves there, and that's where you put the farmers market. So right now the farmers market's in the Tabernacle, and that's a nightmare to get to. It's crazy. It's hard to park. It's nuts. You put it right there at that area. The city can then, I'm sure that the city is charging for the vendors at the farmers market. You could expand the farmers market. You could at least start getting some revenue back by having the farmers market there. Then maybe you build like a barn style building on there to continue to have farmers markets and things all year round on that property, and have it be like a, like a creative type space where people can come and sell, or, farmers markets, things like that. That's just my thinking.
Well, there was, just as an aside to that, there was conversation of the chamber having a second farmers market down at the south end at the Little League fields, 35th Street, on a different day. So I think the farmers markets are Wednesdays.
Yes.
Maybe they would do Fridays for the south end farmers market.
Well,
which I thought was a great idea. It's a different area, different venue. Those fields would be ideal. You have bathrooms, you have parking, you have plenty of space.
That's a pretty congested area there. Maybe that 52nd Street Park is a nice spot, but that's like deep south end. It's like Strathmere North. But I don't know. I mean, I think the city has to really sit down and come up with what's the vision, what's the plan for the future, and what are we going to do with this, and how can I think you got to try and recoup some of your losses on that. You can't just let that sit there, because it's affecting other things in town. It's affecting other progress you can make when you have that big of an investment, just sitting there. If you look at the $120 million budget you're proposing, that's 25% of that almost, so I don't know, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if we get some grass here and get it cleaned up. And if
something has to be done, right, for the neighbors and the neighborhood and the look of the town, because that lot, I agree with you, Dom.
It's an area.
That area looks like a bomb hit.
Yeah, well, it's
got to be cleaned up.
It's got to get cleaned up. But I do think that the city was right, though, to table everything and figure out, hey, what are we going to do? And maybe see if we can try and find a little bit better price tag than all that for sod and sprinklers, because now you're maintaining that, you're cutting that grass, you're doing all that. That's all part of everything. Like, you're going further in the hole rather than trying to, you got to put down the shovel at some point. You got to put down the shovel with that property. And I guess that's the $30 million question, is when are we going to put down the shovel?
And they have a hiring freeze, so it's just more on the plate of the guys at Public Works.
Yeah.
That's a big area to
maintain, definitely.
And maintain, yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm not sure when this vote's coming back to the council. But we'll see. You said it's an area redevelopment. Maybe some other people out there can reach out and say, hey, we got some ideas. Here's some things that might be cool to put there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's again, it's a shame. We could have had that lot back in 2019 for $9 million. We would be 6 years down the road. We would forget that we spent it, and it would have been a reasonable price. But, you know, sometimes you get these groups who are well-intentioned, but really don't have the knowledge and understanding of things that they think they do. And I've seen that over and over again in Ocean City, that people want the best for Ocean City, and they get involved in causes, if you will, and they just don't have the knowledge or understanding. And this is one of those cases where things went sideways, you know.
Well, let's figure out how we can right the ship and see what we can do. Maybe we can put our thinking caps on, and if you got an idea, drop a comment down below and let us know what you think, and maybe we can get this ship righted. So we'll see. Well, as always, everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Before we go, Dom,
what's up?
The After Prom Committee still needs volunteers. If you have an hour, if you have 2 hours, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, May
of this week, May
14th to the 17th. Please, they're desperate. They
get out there and
volunteers.
help people. Get out there and help. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the OCNJ Local, your podcast for everything happening here in America's greatest family resort. Peace.
Peace out.